In this episode, we're talking about how to powerfully navigate hard times and how unprecedented 2020 actually wasn't. So, keep listening.
Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about something that I feel like I've done a pretty good job this year, but it's also something that, I've worked on for a really long time. And it's something that I did this talk to our mentorship students about this. So I haven't really talked about this publicly other than just like our top level clients, but I want to talk about how to navigate really hard times powerfully. And again, it's almost cliche now that everyone's like, oh, this year's been crazy and chaotic. It's like, we all know that, right? Like we all know this year's had a lot of things that have come up. Everything from the election to the Black Lives Matter movement to COVID. This is in October. I don't even know if I don't know when this episode's coming out, but they're talking about a second wave coming. All of this stuff, right? The election is happening in like 3 weeks. So it's just been crazy town this last month. And there's a lot of opinions flying around of different things, everything from, I don't know, masks, no masks, who do we want as our president to, I don't know, it's just, there's so many different opinions and beliefs and all of this stuff. And, what happens is really hard times, or not even hard times, I'd say really emotional things will hit, or a lot of really emotional, chaotic energy will hit. And it causes people to just go crazy. The way I look at it is kind of like an anthill, right? You see the ants, they're all kind of like walking around and in a single file line, and everything's great, dandy. There's a process and everything's walking fine. What happens is something crazy happens. And again, this could be things like 9/11 happened. And that was something that was crazy that happened. And it causes people to just go, for lack of a better word, just causes them to go a little chaotic, or heightened emotions is a better way to say it, I guess. And, someone stomps on that anthill, the ants will have an increase of spiked emotions, and they'll just go kind of crazy. But you give it like a day and you go back, and they're kind of back to the normal routine. And that's what I want to talk about, is that when things started to happen this year, I really looked at what long-term is going to serve us to hold, where do we want to hold our intention? And who do we want to be during this? And how do I want to show up as a leader? Is living in those heightened states of emotion and making these massive pivots in my business something that I really want to do? Is that something I want to do to my audience? I feel like if we have an audience and we have a business, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to the people that listen to us, that follow us. And if I'm going to act chaotic and have heightened emotions and cause more panic to them, I'm causing more harm to them. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to make the best business decisions, be the best leaders, if we're letting our emotions dictate what we're doing. We're letting our fear dictate whatever we're doing. But you can operate powerfully through a lot of these times. And I feel like we've been a rock to a lot of people. And I've been the rock to a lot of people, in my team and in my close circle. That brings kind of like that comfort to know everything is going to be okay. And I think one of the reasons why is just because I've just learned over the years that everything will be okay in the end. And, it doesn't matter what happens externally, we still have full control over our internal. And I've really gotten to the point where I'm honestly okay. If I lose my car, I lose my house, I lose the business, because I can always rebuild. And at the end of the day, I just don't care. I don't care if I lose those things, which allows me to now operate more powerfully. I don't have this expectation in my head that I need to, keep up with the Joneses, or I need to have a bigger, better house, those are all things that I want, but I don't need them, right? I do want a bigger house. I do want a house in Sedona. I do want a pool, and I do want a nice car. But my happiness isn't dependent on any of those things. And if I don't get any of those things, I'm still just so grateful for so many things in my life. So when all these chaotic things happen, I think what happens is people go into the state of what happens to my business, my beliefs are interfering with other people's beliefs, what happens to my life, what is fair, what is not fair. And you just get this big clash of stuff that I don't allow myself to really get sucked into, which allows me to show up really powerfully. And I want to talk about some things that helped us navigate those times, because what happens is like those things will happen like the anthill, and people get really chaotic for a short period of time, like they're heightened emotions for a very short period of time, but then they eventually go back down to normal when things start to normalize. And what happens is the emotions are constantly like spiked, normal, where they could just be normal the entire time. And you just calmly adapt to what's going on around you and lose this idea of this is what I'm supposed to have. This is the way things are supposed to look. This is what I was told my life is supposed to be. This is what society has told me that I need to have. Just get rid of all of those things and we can operate very calmly. And when you do that, you operate as a much more powerful business owner. Now, the thing that I want to talk about is I will refer in this episode to a lot of things that happened in 2020, but this is really something that can happen to anything. You know, there's a disruption in your normal day-to-day life, you know, like maybe there's a death in the family, or you have a bad launch, or you're just having a bad day or a bad week, or I don't know, anything really. There could be anything. So I'm going to refer back to 2020, but I want you to make sure that you understand this can be applied to anything, because what I'm about to say might not make sense at first, but if you understand that concept, that this can apply to anything, then it will make sense. So I'm going to just go out on a limb and say the things that happened this year, they're not unprecedented. Like everyone's like, there's unprecedented times. Like, no, they're not. When we boil it down to what's actually happening, we've had high states of emotions from a lot of people. We've had a lot of fear. More importantly, we've had massive changes to the norms and our routines that we're used to. We've had a ton and heightened amount of opinions flying around on so many different things. And we've had economy suffering, right? So those are all things that have happened. Like those are facts. You can't argue that. There's been a lot of fear. There's been a lot of heightened states of emotions. There's been huge changes to norms and routines. There's been a lot of opinions flying around. If you don't see that anywhere, then obviously you're not on Facebook. And then we all know the economy has been suffering, especially when COVID first hit. We saw some of the worst spikes downward in the stock market ever. And we saw a massive increase in unemployment and businesses shutting and stuff like that. So when we boil it down, fear, high emotions, change the norms and routines, opinions flying around, economy. Those are all things we've experienced before. We've all experienced high states of emotions as a society. You know, 9/11's a perfect example. A lot of fear, you know, like terrorists and terrorism was a big thing right after 9/11, a lot of fear. Change to norms and routines. We've all experienced changes to our norms and routine anytime we move or move jobs or, school systems or whatever. There's so many different changes to norms and routines. There's always been opinions flying around. Economy suffers all the time. You know, like 2008, we had the big crash. We've all been through those things. Like these aren't unprecedented times because we've all experienced those before. The only thing that's different is the way in which it's happening is different. We've been through everything else before and we've come out the other side okay. It's just happening in a different way. But if we boil down what is actually happening, we've experienced it before. But the way it's all happening is new, which means that no one's navigated it before and no one actually knows how to navigate this specifically, right? And I'm just going to go out on a limb. I might get some hate for this, but whatever. I'm open to other people's opinions. But there's a lot of ways that people are saying how we need to navigate the political system. There's a lot of ways of how to navigate anti-racism. There's a lot of opinions on how to handle COVID. Here's the thing. If someone hasn't done something, we don't know how to actually do it. Meaning that if you don't know how to ride a bike, or if you've never ridden a bike, you don't know how to ride a bike, even though might have like studied it all your life, you still don't know how to do it. So if we've never had a society where there wasn't any racism, people might have a lot of great ideas, but no one actually specifically knows. If we've never experienced COVID before, no one actually knows how to handle that situation. If we've never gone through some of the things we've gone through, no one actually knows how to specifically handle those things or how to navigate it. Which means if we just boil down to what we have experienced, which is things like heightened state of emotions, fear, economy collapsing, opinions flying around, changes to norms and routine, we've been through all those before, which means that we know how to actually come out of those things. So the first step for me of navigating these really hard times was to, yes, listen to everyone's opinions. We have to listen to everyone's opinions. There are people that are probably more educated on how to end racism and handle COVID and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, we don't want to feel bad if our beliefs battle and butt heads with somebody else's. That's fine. That's okay that if that happens. What we have to really look at if we want to operate as a rock or with internal happiness is we have to look at how have we handled all the things that we've been through before, which is the economy, heightened state of emotions, and all that stuff. When we want to operate there, we have to look at how we have navigated those high emotions, fear, changes to the routines, opinions flying around, and economy suffering. How have we navigated those effectively? So instead of trying to figure out how do we navigate the specific thing, the action, how to navigate the actions that are happening, we need to look at how do we navigate the result of those actions, because we've been through those results several times. And I hope that makes sense. I'm trying to think of a great metaphor, but I can't really think of one right now. But again, we know how to do something, so we need to focus on that versus the action. So focus on the results we've been through before, not necessarily the actions. So I'm going to just give you guys a couple examples of what I've done personally and what I've told our students to kind of look through as well. So the first thing for me is, yes, there's a lot of quote unquote craziness, even though craziness is subjective and an interpretation. We want to look at what is going on right now. Like there are a lot of really positive things. Like when we started going through COVID and all of that stuff, we started to realize people were actually still buying. It wasn't that the economy stopped so people stopped spending money. It was more of the fact that people were spending money differently. Instead of going to the grocery store to get groceries, people were paying delivery people to go to the store and get groceries. I know we did. People may have been ordering out a lot more, or door dashing, or Uber Eats, or different things like that. A lot of business owners were spending money on rent, and we're a perfect example of that. We were spending probably $2,500 or more a month by having an office that we now don't have to spend any money on because we're getting rid of our office. And now it's not that I'm not spending that money, I'm just spending that money differently now. So we're talking about getting an investment property instead of renting an investment property. So now we're looking at buying a house. I'm still allocating the same money, but using it somewhere differently. So the fact is the most positive thing that I could find during, especially when COVID was hitting, was that money didn't stop being spent. It was just being moved around, meaning that if money was still being spent, and yes, there are going to be cases where people stop spending as much money as they were, but people were still buying things, but they were buying it because of a different reason. And if we could find out how to position ourselves perfectly for this newfound way of spending money, well, we can actually do really well. And so we had a couple of clients who did really well and a couple of launches right in the middle of COVID because of the repositioned of their messaging and their marketing. So there was an example with a student of ours, Beverly, who just started to shift language inside of her content in the middle of COVID. And so she helps people, was helping people lose weight and a lot of that stuff. And instead of saying lose 15 pounds, she just said, here's exercises to boost the immune system. When everyone's worried about COVID, it's all about how to boost the immune system. Nothing changed. She just repositioned what she was doing. And her sales went through the roof. So the opportunities that came out from this are huge, but also most people won't seek out the opportunities because they're too consumed by all the stuff going out there, too consumed about the fear and the worry and all of this stuff, which yes, we can still be concerned with what's going on, but being concerned and being responsible is way different than being in fear and living in high states of emotion. For example, when I go to a store, I wear a mask. I will use hand sanitizer when I leave. I would go into the stores knowing that there was a risk that I would get COVID. I was careful about it, but I wasn't in fear of it. I wasn't living in a state of high emotional state because of it. It's just like, okay, great. This is just what I got to do now. And I'm going to be happy and go do it. And if I get COVID, I get COVID. Like there's no avoiding it. I still have to go to the store, I still have to operate. I could either operate fine and happy, or I could operate freaked out. Like, it doesn't matter. I still have to go do the thing. It's my choice of what I want my state to be. And I was totally fine with it. There's another cool thing that happened when COVID first hit was ad costs were way down. So we saw the lowest cost per leads on our ads when COVID hit, right? So when there are these things going on, there's always going to be positive facts that you can use. And it's your job to shift your perspective to focus on the positive things and to find the positive things. And that's so much easier to do when you're not consumed by the fear and the emotion. And then obviously when all that happened, there was a lot of things about like, you shouldn't be spending money on ads and all of this stuff and blah, 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 blah. And you have to understand too is other people's opinions don't need to dictate what you do. And that was a powerful thing for us because I was operating under this when we have heightened states of emotion. Those heightened states of emotions will eventually go back down. So everyone's freaking out. I don't know how COVID's going to last. I don't know how long Black Lives Matter is going to last. Like, is this permanent? Is it not permanent? Like, blah, blah, blah. It's like everything goes back to normal. And that's why for us inside of our company, when we made a pledge to support anti-racism, I didn't look at things that were like an instant whatever. It was like things of what can we look at that is a long-term effect, because I knew the heightened state of the emotion of the movement, it would eventually die down, like the riots would eventually stop. Eventually, I didn't know how long, but I knew it would. So we looked at long-term things because I understood and didn't want to make decisions from this heightened state of emotions that weren't sustainable. And so that's what we had to do. So we're always kind of shifting our perspective. Now, the next thing that we look at is opportunities that pop up with all of this change. So right now, if you are a course creator, I hope you guys realize the amount of opportunity that just opened up for you because of 2020 is absolutely massive. My wife 6 months ago had no idea what Zoom was, or maybe 8 months ago now. No idea what Zoom was, but now she's a Zoom wizard, like doing homeschooling with my son and all of this stuff. And people are now taking online cooking classes and all their activities were online. Like when people are in quarantine and all you have is the internet, the consumption of online education went through the roof, which means the demand for what you do with your course and your service went through the roof, which means more customers are being created for you because of COVID. I feel like online course creators and online business owners really got a major opportunity given to us because of COVID. And it sounds weird to say, it sounds bad to say, but I mean, it really did. It really shifted focus to online education. Online video consumption went through the roof. So the opportunity created for us is pretty massive. Now, with that being said, you have to actually take the opportunity, and that's number 3. You have to actually take the opportunity. Because here's the deal. Yes, more customers have been created for us online business owners, but at the same time, you know what that did? It created more competition. So there's a lot of people right now that didn't know about online education, or maybe their offline business is suffering, so now they're moving online. I've seen so many people do that. So many people had a great offline business, but because of COVID and all of this stuff and quarantine and the restrictions, they can't operate offline. So they're trying to move it online. They're realizing, wow, there's this whole world where I can share my expertise or coach online or do consulting, and they're trying to do that now. Now, you being the business owner who's been doing this for a year or two or more, you have a major advantage because you have the knowing of what to be doing. But you can't sit around and just wait anymore. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people just try a little bit and they call it an effort. Like, oh, I did a couple social media posts for a month and no one really paid attention, so I stopped and I'm just going to kind of lollygag around it and kind of do it. No, because there's people that are hungry because their livelihood is on the line that are going to jump on this opportunity and do what it takes. And they're coming. And it's your choice to either get on the horse and start riding and really put in an effort or not. But you actually have to take the opportunity that was given to you during all of these hard times. You need to position yourself now because this is not an opportunity for an "oh, poor me" moment, or "I need to do this before I start" moment, or "I can't do this because of X, Y, and Z" moment. No. This is a moment of I'm going to do this now because if I don't do it, it's going to be 10 times harder for me if I wait a year, 2 years, 3 years, because the amount of competition just skyrocketed. So you need to take that opportunity of that potential now. Number 4 is you got to show up as a leader. If you want to navigate the hard times, you got to show up as a leader. Yes, opportunities are showing up, but people will not buy if you're in fear, worry, or anxiety. I mean, could you guys imagine, like, if I got on a webinar or did a video series and I'm just like, guys, I know COVID's really like scary and I'm really just hoping things are going to work out. You know, like I just, I really hope my messaging process is really good. And I mean, I just really hope that you guys buy. If you guys don't buy, I don't know how I'm going to do this anymore. Like, you're not going to buy. Why would anyone buy when that is the person who's supposed to be the leader? You have to show up with the strongest energy that you can. Well, not strongest, but the most confident, get the fear out of it, get the worry out of it, get the anxiety out of it, because people subconsciously can feel it and process it. But also, if you don't have the confidence, it's going to come off as your product isn't being good also. People can read the energy and they do it subconsciously, and people want leaders because they want to feel safe. So what happens in a really hard time is you get the fear, you get the heightened state of emotions. People want to be told that it's going to be okay. They want to be around people that are going to help them and take care of them. They want to be around people that are stable. If you're full of fear and you're full of anxiety, do you want to go around 10 other people that are just as fearful and just as anxious as you are? No, because it's not going to make you feel better. Or would you rather go around and hang out with 10 people that are completely fine, calm, happy, showing up as leaders? Would you rather hang out with those people? I guarantee you'll feel a lot better hanging out with those people than the fear people. And that's why you want to show up as a leader during the hard times. And to me, what a leader isn't someone telling people that they're wrong, bad, etc. That's likely going to hurt your brand. And we saw that a lot. We saw a lot of brands going out there telling people how to think, how to feel, how to act, right? Like, wear your mask, don't wear your mask. Do this, don't do this. Show up this way, or otherwise you're going to get publicly shamed by other people. Go do all of this stuff. And we didn't want to do any of that because we're not going to change our messaging, change our direction in heightened states of emotion, especially when no one knows what the actual solution is. You have to do what is best for you, what you feel like is in your heart, but you have to do it in a way where you're not saying this person's wrong, this person's wrong, this person's wrong, this person's wrong. Because when you tell someone that they are wrong, you're actually playing into the victim role. And most people don't realize that you're playing into the victim role. And you'll only attract other victims because you're making someone wrong. It usually means you view yourself as a victim to them and what they're doing. So let me explain this. A leader's not going to go around, a strong leader's not going to go around and saying, this person's wrong, this person's wrong, this person's wrong, this person's wrong, if they don't live their life by my beliefs. Because what you're really doing is saying, you're doing this over here, and I'm giving you so much of my personal power and my control that I'm going to move my entire brand dependent on what you are doing over here. I'm going to be victimized by this person over here, and I'm going to let them control my entire company, my entire message. And I experienced that. We had some people that didn't like things that I had done during COVID, even though we were following the regulations. Like, I was in a gathering and didn't have a mask on, and someone didn't like that. So they decided to go on Instagram and blast us and do all that stuff. I didn't care. I didn't let that affect me at all. We just continued navigating and doing what we were doing. And we were still under the regulations of the state of what they allowed. So it was like we weren't going against anything. But what they didn't realize in that moment was that they became a victim to me. I didn't want them to be a victim to me, but we took an action and they felt victimized. So they were going out and expressing blah, 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 because of something else outside of their control. And this is what I'm talking about, is to be a leader, we have to navigate that internal peace and that internal freedom and that personal power that no matter what someone else is doing, it doesn't control us. It doesn't control your actions. It doesn't control your posts. It doesn't control your message. It doesn't control your offer, because you need to do what is right in your heart and what you're aligned with. People always talk about alignment. How do I get alignment? Just follow your heart of what you want to do. But the second you start taking actions because of someone else's actions, guess what? You lost all personal power and you're not doing what is in your heart. There's a difference between standing up for what you believe in and making someone else wrong because they don't have the same beliefs as you, because they don't have the same fear as you, because they're not in an emotional state that you're in. Big difference there. I'm going to say that one more time. There's a big difference between standing up for what you believe versus making someone else wrong because they don't believe the same thing as you. And what you may not realize is you're giving them your complete personal power when you do that. The thing is, they probably don't even want your personal power, but you're giving it to them anyways. The next thing is we have to change our thinking, emotions, and perspective. So what's going to happen is when things happen, we have those emotional states and things are, basically the way things have been done. So your routines start to change. We have to find new ways of doing things. So maybe the way you've been launching or running your business needs to shift. But the problem is you have to create something new and think differently than you have in the past, because it is a new world. But the problem is most people try to do that within the box thinking. So we're trying to create something outside the box, but most people try to do that with inside the box thinking, and that doesn't really work out. So you have to create and operate outside of the box. And there's two ways that I found to do this. Now, I talk about breaking out of the box all the time. I'm not going to go through that in very much detail here in this episode. But if you want to get outside the box thinking, you want to start operating outside the box, there's two things that really help with this. Well, there's three things. Number one, there's sitting in silence. And we have a whole episode with a sitting in silence exercise. So I'm not going to go into that in this episode. I do recommend you go back and watch the silence exercise. And if it hasn't come out yet, it'll come out in the next week or two. So I'm not going to talk about the silence, sitting in the silence, and run you through that exercise, because we have a whole episode on that. But we do need to sit in silence and turn that box off. We need personal power, and we need critical thinking. Silence, personal power, and critical thinking. So let me talk about personal power. Personal power is knowing what you want, knowing what you're going to create, and not letting opinions, judgments, norms, and threats stop you. Personal power is not bending to the pressure of society, trends, rules, or ways of being because of fear, or doing it because you think it's normal. The way I look at life is people should fear how much I don't fear them. No one can really do something, and I guess I won't really know that until a lot of this stuff happens, but I like to believe that no one can do anything that's really going to knock me off my rocker. Like, I feel like I can get called out by 10 people publicly who don't like something that I do, and it's not going to affect me as long as I'm doing what's in my heart. I don't really care. I'm just going to stay in my own lane and do my thing. I have no fear of them. They should fear how much I don't fear them. And the whole thing with the video 4X effect and messaging in general is going against the trends and going against the rules and going against the things that we think are causing suffering in people's lives. And that takes courage, and that takes personal power to be able to implement and to deploy. We need personal power to find our strongest message. We don't bend because of what someone else is saying or thinking or what society is telling us. It's not letting others control your emotions or things going on in society control your emotions. It's not making decisions out of emotions or taking actions out of emotions, but from a stable, strong place. There's a quote I found from Diamond Leadership where they said, when leaders lack this inner stability, they are more likely to use power inefficiently through aggression, intimidation, and passivity. I totally messed that one up. Let me say that one more time. When leaders lack this inner stability, they are more likely to use power inefficiently through aggression, intimidation, and passivity. I can't. I'm going to give up. Do you know what I'm trying to say, Matt? Well, I can't tell you because I don't know how to say it. Matt's like, what's the word you're trying to say? It's like being passive. I'll just say being passive. I know there's people listening that are like screaming through the speakers, like, it's this word. This is how you say it. And it's so true. When you lack that inner stability, you don't have the full personal power to be able to strongly operate, listen to the heart, and do what you want to do. Instead of you try to like be really aggressive in your content. And we see this all the time. I see this with people doing thought reversals, and they don't focus on ending the belief that someone has. They're more focused on being aggressive in their point of view and trying to be right. And that doesn't really work. And it's actually a massive lack of personal power. And to me, when you do a thought reversal video and you're trying to be right, you're trying to, say how pet peeve is wrong, it's the ego's way of doing a thought reversal video. It's the Tanal's way of doing a thought reversal video. And so what we have to do is we have to operate with passion and compassion. So passion and compassion. And we also have to operate with full personal power. Personal power means doing and creating what you want without getting controlled by the emotions or how other people are going to react to it. And that takes listening to the heart. It takes personal power. And it's going to also take critical thinking, which we're going to talk about in a second. And Tony Robbins said, there's a powerful driving force inside every human being that once unleashed can make any vision, dream, or desire a reality. There is a powerful driving force inside every human being that once unleashed can make any vision, dream, or desire a reality. And that's your personal power. When you have full personal power and you're unwavering, like it doesn't matter what's going on in the external world. It doesn't matter. You're in that world, but you're out of that world. In full personal power, I use this analogy all the time, metaphor all the time. It's like navigating New York City on the ground floor, trying to get to the other side, versus being on the Empire State Building going, oh, that's clearly where I need to go. I am paying attention to what's going on in the world. I know there's a lot of concerns, and I know that I can help in a lot of ways. But I don't just listen to what someone tells me to do and just do it. I do what feels right in my heart, and I do what feels right to me. And I do it without considering backlash that I might get. Or if I will get backlash, I'm like, the only thing I can do is speak from my heart. And if it doesn't align with some people's things, then it doesn't align with some people's things. But I'm not going to build a business and I'm not going to create messaging, and I don't think you should either, based on the fear of other people's reactions. And when we want to navigate hard times, we got to take all of that off push it all to the side and just do what is right for you and what's going to allow you to keep your personal power. Follow the heart. Now, personal power takes time. It's an ongoing process. But when you stop leaking your personal power, you stop leaking energy, and you stop getting derailed, you're calmly and strongly navigating to the goal without stopping, bending, or dealing with the crew stealing the wheel. By taking back your personal power, you stop giving it away. And I'll give you guys an example of this. In your next argument, like if you get an argument with your wife, husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, spouse, whatever, friend, don't engage. Stand your ground and watch what happens. Listen, be there with compassion, but hold your personal power. And just listen to what they're saying. And just be like, at the very end, just be like, I understand your viewpoint, but this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. And I'm not backing down because this is what I want. And avoid the ruckus cloud. The ruckus cloud is that tornado. It's a thing that sucks your energy. They might argue on something, and obviously if you messed up and they're saying something, then like admit that. But if you feel like they're telling you, you can't do this or I can't do that, or you're getting some silly argument over something that you didn't do, but stand your ground. Avoid that ruckus cloud. Avoid the energy that they're trying to steal from you and just watch what happens. Now, the next thing is critical thinking. This is recognizing the box that you're in and staying out of it. This is recognizing, oh my gosh, I do have a fear around this. Or I do think this is realistic and unrealistic, or I have this goal that I think is unrealistic. Those are all ways of thinking inside the box. Anytime you think something is not realistic, or you think it's too hard, or you think you can't do it, or you have any of these limiting beliefs, those are all inside the box thinking. Critical thinking allows you to stay outside of that box. Instead of listening to how everyone tells you need to respond to certain events going on in the world, you operate the way that you want to. You get to navigate the way that you want to, what's right in your heart. And the personal power allows you to do that. Critical thinking means not believing everything everyone tells you and taking it on as a truth. It's seeing different angles or perspective. It allows you to see and avoid these ruckus clouds. What are these little tornadoes inside of the 3D world that are going on, that are trying to consume your energy and trying to pull you in? What are these things? And critical thinking allows you to see them as nothing more than just tornadoes trying to steal your energy. They might be masked as haters. They might be masked as people calling you out. They might be masked as people not wanting to hear your opinion. These might be masked as whatever. They're just ruckus clouds. And if you ignore them, you don't give them any energy, then they go away. They're gone. You give them no power. One of my mentors always says, be the Vaseline. So Vaseline, what happens? It just slips right off you. You just navigate your path. And we look at some of the biggest thought leaders and the biggest people that have created change, and that's exactly what they did. Right? We look at Martin Luther King's a great example. He's a great hero of mine. Did what was right in his heart. Didn't care what the external world thought. Put himself through a lot of physical pain and a lot of risks. But it didn't matter. He stood in his full personal power and what he wanted to create. He was able to think critically and look outside of the norms of society. And you look at any person who's created something significant, they all have critical thinking. Elon Musk is another one. They have critical thinking skills, and they can think on their own without being told by the media or by all these other people or by society, this is the way things are supposed to be. And I kind of laugh when, it's just so funny. Elon Musk, in California right now, the mask rule is pretty much in full effect. So we can't go anywhere indoors without wearing a mask. And he was going to build, we were all in quarantine, and he was building, and I might mess the story up a little bit, but he was building, big factory, like a Tesla factory out in California somewhere. And California rules were like something he couldn't build it or couldn't operate it because of the rules. And he was gonna no, I'm going to do it anyways. And then they're like, well, you could get arrested or you could be fined or whatever. And he's like, yeah, what are you going to do? Like, go ahead, whatever. I don't care. Like, that's full personal power and critical thinking. Some might say that it's irresponsible and some might look up to it. I'm not saying I'm either one of those, but I just think it's a perfect example of critical thinking, right? He's not listening to what the media tells him or what all of this stuff is to make these decisions. It's critical thinking and personal power. And again, I'm not looking at your opinion. I don't care what your opinion on it, whether it's irresponsible, not irresponsible, whatever, but I'm just using it as an example. Critical thinking allows you to make decisions based on your own views. It allows you to see your own ways of looking at things. It allows you to create your own perspective, which is Elon Musk is a perfect example of that in that scenario. It allows you to form your own ways. And honestly, why would you want to live life any different than that? Like, why? I just don't get it. I wouldn't want to. Critical thinking is recognizing that things that cause suffering are only there because of a lack of critical thinking. So a lot of things that cause suffering in our life usually stem from a lack of critical thinking in that area. So what I mean by that is, me looking at my business and going, oh my God, we can't go into the office anymore and blah, 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 blah. What are we going to do? We all have to be together. Instead of thinking critically of like, okay, great. How do we navigate this scenario? How do we think critically to build a business where we're not in the office? anymore. So instead of sitting in that suffering of like, oh my God, my business, and I can't be in the office anymore, and I'm gonna have to pay rent on an office we're not using for 6 months, and getting into all that, I think critically go like, great, maybe this is an opportunity to make more money. What's a different perspective I haven't seen yet? And really, honestly, critical thinking helps give you your personal power back because you're doing what is right for you. And in these times, in any hard times, I do believe sitting in silence, personal power, and critical thinking are absolutely vital. And if we can add compassion onto that, those four things together can help you navigate any hard time with gracefulness, love, compassion. Personal power, silence, critical thinking, compassion. It's not about being right, but it's about creating the change you want to see. And change doesn't happen by making someone else wrong. It happens when you critically think of a new solution, have the personal power to make it a new norm, and you empower people to see and support it. I'm going to say that again. It's not about being right. It's about creating the change you want to see. And change doesn't happen by making someone else wrong. It happens when you critically think of a new solution, have the personal power to make it a new norm, and you empower people to see it and to support it. Sitting in the silence, personal power, critical thinking, and compassion. And that's the most important part, in my opinion, is you have to have compassion so you can empower people to see and support it. That's where true change comes from. And in my opinion, that's how we can navigate hard times and come out on top during any time. And even if we don't come out on top in the short term, we take a downfall, in the end, the long game, you will always come out on top. And when I say on top, I just mean you're just happy. You're not controlled by emotions. You're not controlled by the external world because you're so empowered on the internal state that none of that stuff matters. And what happens is when you operate there, you usually can build whatever you want. And that, my friends, is how we navigate hard times. So with that said, let me know what your favorite part was. Let me know what your biggest breakthrough aha moment was and tag us. Share it on Instagram. Tag us at I am Brandon Lucero. And if you haven't left us a review yet on iTunes, I'd be so grateful for a review there. Go ahead, do that now. And I'll see all you guys on the next episode.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.